Okay, so this takes us to the respiratory system. Some background information as to why you need this system would be as follows. Basically, all the cells in your body need oxygen in order to make the energy that they need through aerobic respiration. So we have to have a way of getting the oxygen into the body so that it can be delivered to the cells. Secondly, when aerobic respiration does what it does, it produces a couple of byproducts. It produces water and it produces carbon dioxide. Now, you need some water, but there's still some excess water that is generated. And that excess water and that carbon dioxide, we have to have ways of eliminating these. So your respiratory system is basically responsible for these actions, for bringing in oxygen and for getting rid of carbon dioxide and excess water. By definition, respiration is the process by which the body exchanges and uses gases. There are three different types of respiration. There's external respiration, which is the exchange of gases between the lungs and the circulatory system. So basically from the air outside with your blood. Internal respiration is the exchange of the gases between your blood and your body cells. And aerobic respiration is what your body cells do with these gases in order to make energy. The respiratory system, which consists of the lungs and the passageways that lead to it, functions to exchange gases between the blood and the air. Okay, it is responsible specifically for external respiration. If visually you looked at the structures of the respiratory system, if you were going to be a little air particle, you would enter through either your nose or your mouth. And then the air travels down past a little structure called the epiglottis, which helps to protect your windpipe when you're breathing, when you're eating. So like you don't accidentally get solid stuff down your pipe, right? And then it moves past the larynx, which is a little thing called the voice box at the top of the trachea, and then into the trachea, okay? From the trachea, it branches into structures called bronchi, going to the right or the left side of the lungs, whichever lungs you're going to. From there, it branches into structures called bronchioles. And from the bronchioles, it eventually reaches these tiny little air sac structures called alveoli. And that's what this thing is over here. I did have a video that I showed in class that showed respiration, that process. So hopefully you were able to see that in class. If not and you want to see it, just come by and see me. Here's in text what basically happens when you breathe. So again, first off, you enter the body through either your nose or your mouth. All right, that's step one. Then I'm going to give you some other information that you don't necessarily need to know, but it's just good to kind of fill out any questions you might have. Okay, first off, it's better to breathe through your nose for three main reasons. If the air is cold, it is quickly warmed and by the blood vessels that are lining your inner sinus passages. If the air is dry, the mucus lining the nose also helps to moisten it, and it therefore helps to protect the sensitive tissues that are inside of your lungs. And if there are any particles in the air, like say for instance oak pollen, which seems to be a major problem right now, they can get trapped by the large and the small hairs and the mucus that are in your nasal and sinus passages. Okay, and as those particles build up, your body has a way of getting rid of them by creating this little explosion called a sneeze, and then hopefully you'll get it all out of your system and you can go back to filtering as needed. Side notes, sneezes can reach speeds of up to 160 kilometers an hour. From the nose, the air passes into the throat and past the epiglottis, which is now open to allow for the passage of air. Past the epiglottis, the air enters the trachea, which is formed by little alternating rings of cartilage. You don't really need to know that. Inside the trachea, there are little tiny hairs and mucus as well that help to trap particles. And as those build up, you use coughs to get rid of whatever gets stuck in there. At the top of the trachea is a structure called the larynx, or the voice box, and that's also made of cartilage. So step 2, basically, is going past the epiglottis, past the larynx, and into the trachea. Okay, that's step 2. Within the lining of your larynx are little folds of tissue called the vocal cords, and these vibrate as air passes over them to produce sound. The stronger the air passing over those vocal cords, the louder the voice will be, and the longer your vocal cords are, the deeper the voice, or the shorter your vocal cords are, the higher the voice. As a side note, your epiglottis has to stay open in order for air to pass so that you can talk. And it's sort of the biological reason why you shouldn't talk and eat at the same time. I know there's a bunch of social and just good manner reasons why you shouldn't talk and eat at the same time, but there's also a biological reason. If you talk and eat at the same time, you really increase your chances of choking, which is bad. And another side note, laryngitis is an inflammation of the mucous membranes that surround the larynx. And as they get inflamed and swollen, it actually prevents your vocal cords from vibrating, and that's why you can't talk. All right. Step 3, okay, of your air traveling into your lungs is as the trachea continues down, it eventually splits into 2 structures called bronchi. From the bronchi, it branches into structures called bronchioles. And then from the bronchioles, it ends in little tiny grape-like sacs called alveoli. And you can see them in the picture over here. They look like little clusters of grapes, sort of. And these structures make up 90% of your lung tissue. There's so many of them because it is these structures that are responsible for actually transferring the gases, okay, where the transfer actually occurs. It's also because of these that the lungs feel kind of spongy, and if you were able to remove your lungs from your body and put them in water, they would actually float. But again, importantly, the alveoli are the place where the exchange of gases takes place, and it's made possible, as we've learned in the circulatory system. You have to have capillaries if you're going to exchange anything with the circulatory system. So your alveoli are surrounded by capillaries, and just like the capillaries, the alveoli are only 1 cell thick, and that makes that transfer of oxygen and carbon dioxide much easier. And therefore, because this function is happening in these structures, the alveoli are actually your structural and functional unit of the respiratory system. There's another video here that we showed in class. Again, if you want to see it, you can just come by to see me, but the video is available online. If you wanted to search that "How do we breathe" animation, you should be able to find it. All right, so how is it that we're able to breathe? What actually physically makes that possible? Well, you have muscles that attach to your rib cage, and when they contract and pull upward, they pull upward and outward. Okay, below your lungs is a muscle called the diaphragm, and this, when it contracts, it actually pulls downward, and both of those muscular movements cause the chest air, volume to expand. All right, and as you make that volume larger, you're actually decreasing the relative pressure around the lungs. All right, so if you can remember back when we were talking about diffusion, when you have differences in concentration, which is very similar to differences in pressure, you will get a movement from high to low. Okay, so right now we've lowered the pressure around the lungs, And so now there is relatively higher pressure outside of the lungs in the air than inside. That means air will naturally want to move into your lungs, causing you to inhale. When the muscles relax, the reverse happens. You get a compression of that cavity that surrounds the lungs, and it effectively increases the pressure around the lungs. So now you have a relatively lower air pressure outside of the lungs in the air than inside, and that means that you exhale. And that's basically just how breathing works. And we're going to stop it right there. Thank you so much.